Parents, especially fathers, should be good and protect their children. But not for Josef Fritzl. Instead of protecting his princess, he locked her up. This is a sad story of Elisabeth Fritzl, who spent 24 years in her father's prison. Fritzl's grandmother, Anna Fritzl, was born in somewhat unglamorous town of Amstetten, in Austria. She married a mill owner. Their loveless marriage was made worse because Anna couldn't conceive. So Fritzl's grandfather had sex with his servants. One of these, Maria, would become Josef Fritzl's mother. In 1934, Maria met a very poor man called Josef. April 9, 1935, the unmarried couple had a child. They gave their son his father's first name and Anna's maiden name. Josef Fritzl was probably stigmatized by his conservative community from birth because of his illegitimacy. At home, Josef was just as likely to be mistreated. At the time, Austria was under the control of Nazi Germany. His father abandoned the family when he was 4 years old and later died in the war, leaving him to be raised by his mother, who often beat him. Maria was rather off balance before World War II. Many who knew her said she wanted a child but not the associated responsibilities of having one. She would often beat, berate, and neglect the young Josef. Her fiery temper got her arrested by the Third Reich in Austria in 1945 and sent to a concentration camp. She would subsequently be freed by the Allies after the war. Fritzl ended up in an orphanage, where he was told his mother was dead. Maria did manage to get him back after the war. Yet, the abuse didn't stop. It only got more intense, after her stint in a concentration camp. At age 15 that Fritzl also began developing a few deviant sexual habits. He began with voyeurism in wandering around his corner of Amstetten listening for the noises of young couples having sex. That voyeurism would escalate, as these behaviors tend to do in the case of sexual psychopaths like Josef Fritzl. From nuisance-type behaviors, like being a peeping Tom, to more serious ones like exposing himself to young women and getting violent with the prostitutes in the red light district of Linz. This escalated to the ultimate act of revenge against his mother. Fritzl locked the bedridden Maria up in her own attic with the windows bricked up, where she died in 1980. In 1951, at the age of 16, Fritzl headed to Linz to begin his studies and on-the-job learning to become an engineer. Engineers were in very high demand after the war. 5 years later, he would meet his wife, 17-year-old Rosemary Byers, at the firm where he was working as a technical assistant. Rosemary's father also worked there. At the age of 21, he married a woman named Rosemary, who was 4 years younger than him, and worked as a kitchen helper. Josef and Rosemary had 7 children and Elisabeth is their 4th child. Who born on April 8, 1966. In 1967, he was known to have raped a young woman at knife point in Linz, though the record was erased after 15 years. Fritzl was also a suspect in 2 other assaults in the area, is said to have engaged in indecent exposure. August 28, 1984. Josef Fritzl kept his daughter as a basement sex slave for 24 years. Josef started building the basement around 1981 or 1982, and he would use it as his daughter's prison. Josef constructed the premises with concrete and steel, electrically operated doors with remote control and combination lock. He also said it also provided a wash basin and a small toilet, a bed, a fridge, electricity, and a lamp. The nightmare started on August 28, 1984, when Elisabeth, 18 years old, vanished from her house. Her mother, Rosemary, made a report about the loss to the local police. For weeks, there was no news of Elisabeth's discovery. Suddenly, her parents receive a letter from Elisabeth, in which she stated that she was tired of her family life and ran away. Josef Fritzl told police who came to the house stating that he did not know where Elisabeth had gone. However, Josef said that she might join a religious group, something Elisabeth had told him before. In fact, Josef knew where her daughter was. Elisabeth was apparently in the basement, 20 feet under in the house where they lived. On August 28, 1984, Josef called his daughter to the basement of their home. He installed the door to the newly renovated basement and needed some help. Elisabeth helped her father install the door. Suddenly, Josef swung the door, and Elisabeth was pushed and fell into the room. Then Josef cupped his daughter's face with a towel until she fainted. For 24 years, all Elisabeth could see was just a dirty basement. Her father lied to her mother and the police about Elisabeth's disappearance. Two years of her imprisonment, Elisabeth was pregnant. Although, she later had a miscarriage at 10 weeks of pregnancy. However, 2 years later, she became pregnant again, this time with a healthy womb. In August 1988, a baby girl named Kirsten was born. And 2 years later, another baby was born, a boy named Stefan. Kirsten and Stefan remain in the basement with their mother, with weekly rations of food and water given by Josef. Elisabeth was trying to teach her children the primary education she had, and tried to give them the most normal life as she can, even in dire conditions in a windowless room without daylight or decades of medical care. And over the next few years, Elisabeth gave birth to 5 more children. Another one remains in the basement with Elisabeth. One died shortly after birth, and Josef brought the other 3 upstairs to live with Rosemary. Josef made stories about how he discovered the children. The stories often involved finding children on bushes near the home or on the doorstep. Every time, the child would be swaddled neatly and accompanied with a note allegedly written by Elisabeth, claiming that she couldn't take care of the baby and was leaving it with her parents to keep the baby safe. Until one day in 2008, one child in the basement fell ill. Elisabeth begged her father to allow her 19-year-old daughter, Kirsten, to get medical care. As Kirsten fell ill and became critical, reluctantly, Josef agreed to take her to the hospital. He picked Kirsten from the basement and called an ambulance, claiming that he had a note from Kirsten's mother explaining her condition. During the week, the police questioned Kirsten and asked for information about her family. But she revealed nothing. The police eventually became suspicious of Josef and reopened an investigation about the disappearance of Elisabeth Fritzl. They read the letters that Josef claimed Elisabeth had written, which she had left for her family. But the police saw inconsistencies in it. On April 26, 2008, Elisabeth escaped from the basement for the first time. After nearly a quarter-century Josef had locked her up. Elisabeth immediately went to the hospital to see her daughter, where the hospital staff alerted police to her suspicious arrival. That night, Elisabeth was detained and questioned about her daughter's illness and her father's story. Elisabeth Fritzl finally told the story of her 24-year imprisonment. She explained that her father kept her in the basement, and she gave birth to 7 children. Elisabeth explained that Josef was the father of her 7 children. She said that Josef would meet her at night, forced her to watch pornographic films, and then rape her. She also explained that Josef had been abusing her since she was 11 years old. The police arrested Josef Fritzl that night. After the arrest, Elisabeth's children in the basement were released. Rosemary allegedly knew nothing of what happened right under her feet. The tenants who lived in the apartment on the first floor also never knew what was happening directly below them. As Josef had explained, all the sounds were coming from the noisy plumbing and heating. A psychiatrist who interviewed Josef concluded that Josef's horrific childhood life experience as a child, raised by a brutal and unloving mother, had driven him to control someone completely. The someone turned out to be her daughter Elisabeth, who had been kept in the basement, and Josef started raping her when she was 18, although the abuse started when she was only 11 years old. Josef Fritzl is serving his life sentence in a special prison unit for the criminally insane in Austria's prison. In March 2019, it was reported that his health is rapidly declining and he reportedly doesn't want to live as he rots in prison. Fritzl is reportedly suffering from dementia and his condition has deteriorated recently. Josef also changed his name to Josef Meyerhoff, in an attempt to escape his own identity and what the prisoners would do to him. But even after being sent to prison, he does not show any remorse for his crimes. He doesn't believe that he's done anything wrong at all, and still believes that it's a failure of justice and that he's been wrongly locked up. Elisabeth may not have imagined the end of this happy ordeal when she escaped from her dungeon for the first time. Her skin was pale from being trapped without sunlight, and she only ate cheap supermarket food. Even during that confinement, Elisabeth lost all of her teeth after over 2 decades without dental work. However, her recovery was gradually bringing results. Perhaps most remarkable is that Elisabeth has returned to a good relationship with her mother. Elisabeth Fritzl's struggle to return to a relatively everyday life must be considered a miracle.